beatbox? Y'all ready to dance?
All right, everybody, we're going to get rolling. Good morning. Wow, that was half-assed. Hi, everybody, we're going to get rolling. Good morning.
Good morning!
That's what I was expecting. Awesome. My name is Scott. I'm going to be your facilitator for the bulk of the day, so you're going to get so tired hearing from me, I'm not going to talk any further at the moment. But to really kick off the day, please put your hands together and welcome to the stage, Greg.
It is kind of weird, like people call me Gordo, and then there's this crisis, like what do we call him? Is it Greg or is it Gordo? You guys, today is a really big day. I'm going to talk about why in just a second, but I did want to take this opportunity to tell you guys some great news. 2022 was a fantastic year for Gordon Highlander. We finished the year back at our record high watermark at about $250 million in annual revenue. We saw a fascinating first quarter where we did $50 million worth of work and we made zero. And we had a really tough day in the parking lot where we talked about withholding bonuses for the first quarter. And if you think about where we are now compared to where we were in the first quarter, it makes it even that much more special. You guys, we finished the year with a $325 million backlog. That's more than double the biggest backlog that the organization has ever had. We've had trouble with this in the past where we call it a little too early, but we're going to go ahead and call it today. Where's Carmen at? Where's Carmen? Stand up, Carmen. We thought we were going to have a $400 million plan for 23, and then Carmen sold a $100 million job on the first week. You guys had to put up with my cheesy videos over the holidays, and that was so that you could hear from me about why today is so important. You guys, Mandy has helped lead the efforts here with the help of Eagles Flight and Scott. And you guys, today is a culmination of over a year's worth of work. So let's give them a big round of applause. And really what's on my heart here around client centricity, the hardest lessons and things to learn are the paradoxical things. How can two things be the same? And I am extremely passionate about experiential and paradoxical learning. If I asked you what you did, and you were a superintendent, Justin, you'd talk to me about how you built things. But on the other side of that is a client in a relationship. And I think we're building more than projects. We're not chasing projects, you guys. We're chasing clients, and we serve clients. And there's something about the ego and the way it works and how formulaic it thinks. And it seems like we always go straight into the list of things that we actually do that's in our job. But that's very different than the lens that we're going to lay down on the entire organization today through client centricity. This will become our doctrine. It will be the way that we talk about who we are as Highlanders, and we will lay this client-focused lens on every part of the business. You guys, are you tracking with me? It's a little twist to the way we normally think about things. I am super excited to introduce to you guys some of my best fucking clients. Okay? I will tell them, and I'll tell you that I love them. And I'll do it up here with them. I need you to understand the serious nature of the relationships that are underneath this organization. Our clients are our friends. I imagine if something ever happened to me, they'd be at my funeral. This isn't transactional. This is relational. All right? You guys, back to Scott. Thank you very much.
And we're off. All right, so you're going to hear more from Gordo as we go through the day, and you're going to be hearing from other people as well, including some Highlander clients, as you heard. What I'm going to do right now is get out of Gordo's way. and just want to lay down some ground rules for the day. And big picture, my goal as a facilitator is that today is engaging, that you maybe have some fun along the way, and that when we're done, you are leaving this room with a few new thoughts about this idea of client centricity, but more importantly, how are you going to use it in your specific role? What does it look like for you as an individual Highlander? That's where we're driving to. So just a few simple things to help us get there. First and foremost, you got to be all the way in for the day. And there's a difference between being present and being engaged, right? Present, you're all present, your cheeks are in the seats. But engaged is something else entirely, right? So really jump into the conversations. If you have questions, ask questions. If you're not clear on something I throw out into the room, this is the place to talk about it. I don't want you leaving here with any sort of doubt in your mind around what did Gordo actually mean when we're going to layer this on top of the things that we already do. What does that actually look like for me? A few other just quick logistic pieces. There's going to be lots of materials that you're using throughout the day. For example, it looks like almost everyone has put some stickers on their name badge. I'm going to explain what we're going to do with those in just a minute. If you have not yet done that, there's some sticker sheets on the table. So all I would ask is that you pick 3 stickers that for whatever reason mean something to you and just stick them on your name badge. If you decided, oh wait, I want to change my sticker, there's extras. That's okay, nobody's tracking that. Also, at the top of your table, you'll see there's a flag with some stuff underneath the flag. Just leave it there for now. Don't mess with what's underneath the flag. I know by saying that, I just made half of you want to mess with what's underneath the flag, but try to resist that urge. We're going to get into that a little bit later this morning. Also, just be aware of safety, right? There's a big room, and you're going to be moving around, so just be mindful of chair legs or someone put a bag down and just no helmet-to-helmet contact, really, as we go through the day is what I would say. Next thing I want to point out, there will be breaks throughout the day. I know that spending an entire day sitting in a big room is the opposite of how most of you spend a typical work day. So there's going to be breaks. We're going to change the energy. There are going to be times that you're changing who you're sitting with just to mix things up, just to keep the day moving at a good pace. And you've already grabbed a little bit for breakfast. Out where you were as we were getting rolling, that's where lunch is going to be. You are going to get fed. End of the day, I understand there's going to be a little bit of a happy hour kind of a thing going on as well. So one more thing I've put in your head that now you're just like, get on with it, Scott, because you're between me and a beer. So that's just a few ground rules for the day. The other thing that I want to call out is I understand there is still business happening. So if you are in the kind of role where you might get a call from a client or text about something that's going on that you need to deal with, we get that. All I would ask is that you just quietly leave the room and deal with whatever you got to deal with outside, because I promise you, everybody sees you trying to sneak a text under the table. And now you're not only out of the conversation, but you've distracted everyone at your table. Just out of respect to each other, deal with what you got to deal with outside, and then just come back in when you're ready. If you are cool with those as sort of our ground rules, just give me a thumbs up. Awesome, about 90% of you agreed with that. Some of you are already wondering, really? What are we doing here today? That's okay. So let me talk a little bit more then about that. And part of what you already heard from Greg is that there's an element of client centricity that is relational. It's something in addition to, above and beyond simply the getting the work done, which, by the way, is critically important. We're not suggesting that it's not. Client centricity is then, what's the relationship piece on top of that? What is that, the element, the secret sauce that goes above and beyond to where you hear a CEO saying, these are clients that I love. These are clients that would come to my funeral. That's a pretty big statement to make. So here's how I want you to use the stickers. At your table, hopefully you've at least said hello if there are people at your table that you haven't met, but we're going to take a couple minutes so you can just get to know the people at your table, maybe in a slightly different way. I'm going to give you a few minutes, and all I'm going to ask you to do is quickly go around the table, introduce yourself, and explain why those stickers. Why'd you pick those, right? You can be as revealing as you choose to be. There's no wrong way to do this. For example, let me explain mine. So my name is Scott. I'm a facilitator from Eagles Flight. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what that actually means as we go. And my three stickers are the coffee cup, because coffee. And I also chose the airplane because in my work I travel a lot, so I'm on planes a good portion of a typical work week. And the last one I picked were those those track shoes, which in my interpretation are trail shoes. I'm an avid hiker. I hike at least once a week, and this past weekend for me was 117 weeks in a row without missing a weekend hike. So, okay. But don't get too impressed, because I also, my wife and I, we post pictures of our hikes on Instagram, and we call ourselves on Instagram No Hurry Hikers. So I just want you to have a clear picture of what a hike means for Scott and his wife. So those are my stickers. Now take a few minutes at your table. Just make sure everyone gets a chance to share a little bit about their stickers. Just another minute or so. Make sure everyone gets to share something. All right, finish up whatever thought you're on. Let's come back together. Excellent. So as I was walking around the room, some of you got through it fairly quickly. Some of you went back to the sticker sheet to continue the conversation with new ideas. Again, there's no right or wrong way to do that. It's just another aspect of how do you build relationship? When we use that word, it's one of those big giant words, and there's a million self-help books and all of that, but really it's just you know someone on a slightly more personal level is where it starts. So raise your hand if you just learned something new about somebody. Almost everybody's got a hand up. Raise your hand if you learned a little more than you wanted to learn about somebody. Okay. Just sometimes, thank you for being honest. Yeah. It happens. You never know what someone's going to share. So I wanted to share a little bit more about me and this company, Eagles Flight, that I'm here from. So Eagles Flight is, you'd consider us a vendor. We are a learning partner with Gordon Highlander. Eagles Flight is based just outside Toronto. We're a global company. We've been around about 35 years now. And we work with companies in pretty much any industry you think of. We probably have clients in that sector, from nonprofits all the way up to the Fortune 5 and everything in between. As for me, I have been doing this sort of work for about 20 years. And what I mean by this sort of work is what it boils down to is my job is help other people be better at their job. That's really all it means. I'm not going to bore you with all the details of my resume and the things I've done. I'm happy to chat at lunch or on a break or over a drink later if you want to know that. But I really think it's only nice to know for all of you. Here's what I think is the need to know. Gordon Highlander has been working with Eagles Flight now for a good year leading up to today. I'm going to share some of that work that we've already accomplished with Gordon Highlander. But all of that is to say our focus as an organization is to help our clients be as successful as possible. Now, as a sort of a training and development company, we come at that through the lens of people. My mother-in-law is constantly asking me, tell me again what you do. And I always try to find a way to boil it down just so that can be a nice tight phrase. And so basically what I think about when I'm working with a company like Gordon Highlander is my philosophy is grow your people to grow your numbers. That's what it comes down to. So today we're going to be talking a lot about what does that look like and how do we relate to one another within this room? How do we relate to our clients outside the room? And it all starts with that idea of relationship and just really understanding what's going on for this organization or on this project or at this phase of a build, whatever it is. What's the relationship piece? As you heard Gordo say, right? It's really easy just to focus on what's the next piece, what's the next widget, what's the next line on the spreadsheet, whatever your job is. It's really easy to get laser focused on that and lose sight of what's the people side of this. So what I'm going to do now is share a little bit more information around this idea of client centricity, which it sounds like one of those consultant phrases, right? I mean, when I first heard it, I thought, okay, who made that up so they could sell a book? But it really, once you start to explore it, and hopefully you'll get there too by the end of today, there's some weight to it when you really start to break it down. So I'm going to start to build your understanding of what we mean by client centricity with a really, really quick history lesson. And this idea of client centricity has not always been in the conversation. So cast your mind back 100-ish years ago. Pretty much most of the U.S. Was in what you'd call a farming economy. And so what's going to help you kind of think about this evolution is to imagine that you have a kid, and the kid's having a birthday, and you want to make a birthday cake. So in a farming economy, if I want to make a cake for my kid, I'm probably going out and grabbing eggs from my coop in the backyard. I may even be growing the wheat that gets turned into the flour that I'm using, and I'm making everything myself. All of the work involved, all of the time, all of the effort, that's on me. Fast forward a little bit, and the economy moves to more of an industrial economy. So factories, and the other thing that happens around this time is we start to have prepackaged products, like a cake mix, for example. If I'm going to make a birthday cake, now I can just go to the store, buy a box. I still need to add a couple eggs, maybe some oil, but it's so much easier. It takes so much less time for me to get what it is that I need. Fast forward a little bit further. And then we move into what became known as the service economy. So again, to think about the birthday cake, as we move into a service economy, now we've got things like supermarkets and mass retail and things like that. But to think about the cake idea, I want a cake. I just go to the supermarket and order a cake. And they'll probably customize the decoration or something for me, and I can pick up the candles right there. It is so much simpler to get exactly what it is that I am looking for. Take us up to today with the internet, and everything's hyper personalized and all of that, and so it's kind of being referred to as the experience economy. Now, I want to have a birthday party for my kid. I just pick up the phone or a couple clicks on a website, and they're going to take care of the decorations and the invitations and the games for the kids and party favors. They'll probably throw in the cake for free. So just think about that evolution over really just 100 years, which is, in the scheme of things, not a huge amount of time. But alongside that evolution, all of us, our own expectations continue to climb and climb and climb. And typically what happens is our expectation of any sort of business, purchase, whatever it is, typically whatever our last best experience was, that's now the new bar for every experience I have after that. So this idea of client centricity then starts with having that understanding of our clients have huge expectations, because that's kind of become table stakes in the world that we live in. If you're not at least doing that, you're not in the game for long. So this whole idea of an experience is the next thing that I want you to think about. When we talk about a client's experience, what that means is every single interaction that a client has with Gordon Highlander is part of their experience. And I mean every single one. I don't just mean, hey, we built you this amazing thing, here's the keys, thanks, see you next time. I mean from the initial phone call. I mean if I'm driving down the street and I go past a Highlander job site and I see the banner, that's a touch point potentially. Because now it's in my head that, oh, that's a Gordon Highlander project. Who's Gordon Highlander? Now I'm thinking about it, right? So as you think about the experience, all of that comes down to what's the client looking at? Client centricity is not just a nice to have, it is a competitive need in today's economy. And as much as 2/3 of a company's competitive edge is based on that experience. Every single thing, every phone call, what the invoice that finance sends out, what that looks like is actually another touch point for that client. All of that put together, every one of those interactions all becomes the overall client experience. Some of you may already know this. Some of you may have thought about this in some form. I'm just trying to condense it so that we're all kind of speaking the same language through the day as we talk about this idea of client centricity. It's whatever your role, whatever part of the business you work in, are you thinking about what's the client experience of what I'm doing? Even if you never have direct face-to-face contact with a client, what you do is still part of some interaction that they're having with Gordon Highlander. You're going to have opportunities as we go throughout the day to actually talk about this in small groups of, okay, here's what I do, here's what I think that means for me, and have a little back and forth to really chew on this idea. All I'm doing right now is just kind of laying the foundation for where we're going. So the work we've done over the last year to coming alongside Gordon Highlander to really explore this too, as you heard from Gordo, this is the right next evolution, if you will, of Gordon Highlander. It's a thing that's already been happening, and some of you in this room, I already know, are brilliant at being client-centric. You might not use that language when you talk about it, but it's just what you do, it's who you are. So that's where we start. So some of the work that Eagles Flight has been doing has been to really uncover, well, what's already happening around this idea. It's not a brand new thing. We want to build on what's already working and take it to the next level, whatever that might look like, so that we can get to a place where every Highlander has an understanding of, here's what the behaviors are. What do I actually do? What do I actually say? Yeah, fine, theory and concepts is one thing, but what do I actually do? And then the more people are doing that consistently, it starts to turn into norms. That's just what it means. It's part of what it means to be a Highlander. That's what we do. So as new people join, it doesn't take long for them to realize, oh, this place is a little different than my last job. They do things this way here. And it's all aligned with who Gordon Highlander is. So it's really important, if you haven't picked up on this yet, that nothing we're talking about today is meant to replace the great things that already happen at Gordon Highlander. What today is about, as you heard from Gordo, is what can we layer on top of what we already do really well to take the organization to that next level. As next time you sell another $100 million deal, right, you want to know that, okay, is everyone going to take care of my client, right? It's part of it, yeah. So we're going to get to a place where everything that is done is all focused on what is that experience that we are actually delivering to clients, and it absolutely has to be aligned with the core values of the business. We're not replacing those. They're brilliant and they work. So part of the conversations that we've been having over the year is how do we ensure that whatever we're bringing into the conversation around client centricity, that it still makes sense for every Highlander, that it's something you can actually use. So what I'm going to share next are some of the ideas that have already been surfaced through the work that we've been doing over the past year. I know some of you in this room have already had an interaction or two or maybe even more with different people from Eagles Flight, either myself or other folks from the Eagles Flight organization along the way. What I want to do in this next little section is just get everybody up to speed on what we've done so far. So the first thing we looked at is basically, what do we already have? So that's where it starts. And this word discovery is just the word that gets used in our work. That means let's find out, literally discover what's going on with one of our clients. So those initial conversations, and this was done through some one-on-one interviews and some focus group type interactions with different Highlanders to figure out, all right, what's going on right now for the business. So here's sort of the top line of some of those things. That big picture, the company's growing fast and it moves really fast. So that's important to know, that whatever we're bringing to the table, it's got to fit within that environment. That pace and that rapid growth has a real impact on how does communication work in the organization. It potentially can impact consistency across what people are doing day to day. there's potentially an impact on, do people understand where they fit into the whole picture of Gordon Highlander? And all of that contributes to some risks, potentially. For the business, there's a risk to what is the experiences that clients have with Gordon Highlander. It is a bigger company than it was when Gordo founded it, which means that those interactions look a little bit different. As a company grows, you have to put structures in place, otherwise the business can't function. But how do you put those in place in a way that doesn't negatively impact clients just for the sake of, oh, we're trying to get our stuff done? And you start to lose sight of how does it impact our clients. So that's where the risk comes to the company's reputation and the brand and what Gordon Highlander is known for out there in the marketplace. So that's current state. So we took that then and really tried to isolate what are the strengths, what are the things that Gordon Highlander is brilliant at that we want to make sure, A, we don't interfere with, and B, we really start to leverage those and build on those. So here are the strengths that we identified just as that outside perspective, taking a look at the business, that throughout the company there is this sense of a servant heart, that the values that are in place truly do guide much of what Gordon Highlander does. People are really good at solving problems. Raise your hand if there was no problem on the last project you worked on. Exactly, right? I mean, that's just like, it's almost a no-brainer. Of course we're good at solving problems. That's kind of what we do every day, right? Yeah. And that people already have that sense of we want to put clients first. Again, this idea of client centricity is not new to Gordon Highlander. What we're doing today is really establishing a shared understanding, a common language, so that everyone's moving forward in the same direction. So those are the things we want to build on. We then took that and took it down to, here's the why. Here's why client centricity truly matters for Gordon Highlander. You heard Gordo make reference to the idea of why are we doing that. You're going to hear more from him later. But to try to boil it down to a couple of sentences about here's what it means for Gordon Highlander. I want to be really clear. This is not something that Eagles Flight sort of sold off the shelf. Well, here's your answer right here. This was very much developed in partnership with multiple people. Gordo gave a shout out to Mandy. Certainly I want to add my own thanks to Mandy's partnership along the last year. But it was not just me and Mandy coming up with this. There were a lot of voices, a lot of input that got to getting to this place of here's why we're doing it. It is not us saying we're doing it. It is clients. That's where we're headed. We want clients to say that about us, that we are the source, they are the source of everything that makes Gordon Highlander successful. The language on this slide and on the next slide, you're going to get this at the end of the day in a little card, so you've got this. So I know there's going to be a lot of words on the next slide. Don't worry, you're not expected to memorize it or write it down or anything. I just want to walk you through it. So we took that why, and then we took a look at the values, which we had already identified as a strength. So we were looking at, so great, how do those values show up through the lens of client centricity? So what I meant by it's a lot of words in really small font, so they'd all fit on one slide. So I'm not going to bore you by reading through every word on this slide, but I do want you to know, again, the idea is client centricity builds on and lives alongside your core values. It is not replacing them. It is not changing them. They are vital to everything you do. These definitions, what you're seeing on screen, this just looks at those values through the lens of client centricity. Again, you're going to get these before the end of the day. There'll be more conversation around them and how they come to life. So again, still just walking you through the work that we've done already and how we get to today. So the next idea that we went to is, let's get more specific. Let's really start to take a look at where are the opportunities within Gordon Highlander, as well as what are the things that are already in place that can support these ideas that you're seeing on screen. And we did that by looking at again, our language, we call it barriers and enablers. This is when we're really getting into the how. How do we actually do this? So as I build this slide, anything you see in green has already been identified as an enabler, meaning this is something that will help client centricity throughout the organization. It's things that are already there within individuals or within departments or within the business that we can build on. Anything you see in red, we call that a barrier. These are things that may be a drag or have some sort of a negative impact on this idea of client centricity within the business. Not because it's necessarily anyone's fault. We're just taking a look at objectively what's going on in the business now, what are people identifying. So this work came out of some small group work to really try to unpack some of these. I know some of you in the room were with me and a couple of other Eagles Flight folks when we were really looking at these barriers and enablers and trying to boil them down. So these were the top ones that came out of that work. Yeah. Yep.
Like I said, there's been a year's worth of work. There's workshops. There's different people that have participated in all of this. And I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone can see.
That I wasn't just blowing smoke from the stage. Yeah. Yeah, and again, thank you to those of you who have been involved in the work so far. Everything that we're talking about, all of these ideas, yeah, the idea of client centricity, Eagles Flight brought to the table, but how it actually shows up and everything you're seeing on these couple of slides I'm walking you through is 100% about Gordon Highlander. It's not something that was prepackaged that we just sold as a solution. It's very much something that we built in conjunction with Gordon Highlander, right? So, to build it, thank you, Greg. So the first big idea that we were looking at is just that foundational idea of understanding client needs. Because if my goal is to create an amazing experience for a client, then I need to know what that looks like for them, not just what I think it is based on my experience or my perception, but what are they telling me it is? So under that, there's already a sense of we're always looking for insight. We're looking for what's going to help, what's the next best thing. So that's an enabler. That's already working. We want to keep that. Some of the potential barriers around this idea of understanding client needs are, does everyone really understand what that buyer journey looks like? What are all of those different touch points? Because if you don't even know what the touch point is, it's hard to figure out, well, how do I impact that? What's my piece of that puzzle? And then we're going to talk a little bit later about this idea of a client constellation. Because so far, I've only been talking about client with a capital C as though there's only one. But there's all sorts of different clients and all sorts of different variations of what those interactions might look like on any given project. So that's at the client need piece. The next big bucket we were looking at then is, okay, so what's that ideal customer experience or client experience? Again, the enabler that we've identified is people are generally focused on solutions and focused on if something goes wrong, how do we recover from that? How do we make it right? How do we get back on track, whatever that might look like? So that's what's working. That response time was identified as, again, potentially an opportunity. And when I say identified by those people that you saw raise their hands earlier. Again, this is not Eagles Flight saying, here's what we think is going on. This is a lot of in-depth conversation internally about, hey, where can we move the needle? What's getting in our way of really doing this? And the consistency piece, again, which I mentioned even in the current state, given how fast you're growing, consistency starts to slip sometimes. Next big idea we looked at was the leadership piece, right? Because that's always going to be important. Now, what was identified through those discussions is that there's a real commitment among the leadership of Gordon Highlander to have this actually happen, this idea of client centricity, to truly figure out how do we make this work. There are some potential barriers in does everyone have an across-the-board shared understanding of what's at stake if we are able to get there, and what's at stake if we don't get there? What's the potential consequences of this work? And then we took a look at just resources and processes throughout the organization. Right? Here again, there's a good sense of collaboration across the organization. A lot of you live that every day just in your work. I've got to interact with this team and that team, and here's the handoff, and what's the whole pipeline, and things like that. Here again, some of the barriers identified were processes generally. There's opportunities to improve that so that they are supporting this idea of client centricity. There was some lively conversation around, we have processes, but are they actually getting in our own way to have them in place? So all of this that I've been talking about so far, everything you've heard so far, this is all to lay the groundwork for the more detailed conversations and experiences we're going to be having for the rest of the day. Raise your hand if you have a slightly better understanding now of what client centricity is about and what it looks like for the organization. Raise your hand if you still have questions. I would expect a lot of hands, actually, because really all I've done is given you some sort of weird version of a TED Talk where I'm talking about client centricity, but we really haven't gotten into any of the good stuff, any of the real nitty-gritty. We wanted to lay this foundation, though, before we move deeper into our day. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to take a little break, because you've already been sitting for a long time. The restrooms are in the back. Refill a beverage. There's a beverage station up here. It looks like there's still some snacks and things in the back room. So we're going to take 10 minutes. Before you go, though, I want to clarify a couple of things. So the first thing that I want to have you do is turn your attention to the materials at the front of your table, because when we come back from this break, you're going to be jumping into a team-based challenge called Promises, Promises. So here's what I'm going to have you all do before you leave for break. On top of all the stuff is a little flag. That is your country's flag. These are all made-up countries. Don't try to figure out what it is. So you are sitting right now with your team for Promises, Promises. So this flag, this name is the name of your team. Underneath the flag, you're going to see a wooden box with some name badges. Don't do anything with those. Just put that to the side for now. Underneath that, you will see a base and a stick. So take the stick, put it in the base, hang the flag on the stick. That's all I need you to do right now. Nice! First one's done. All right. So once you have done that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Just come back to this table. Do not open the boxes yet. I'll see you in 10. Need a piece of paper? All right, friends, find your way back to your seats. And we are going to carry on with the next piece of our day. This is when all of your questions about the flag and those little wooden boxes, this is when all of that is going to start making a little bit of sense. So what we're about to do now is an experience called Promises, Promises. I'm going to tell you a lot of information. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. Before I get into that, though, I want to introduce the other folks who are here from Eagles Flight. Gentlemen, if you could just step forward. So in order to run this program, it takes more than just me. So you'll have me, but we also have two other folks who are here to help from Eagles Flight. Right here, this is Mike, and this is Greg. They appreciate that applause because they actually haven't done anything yet. So they're happy that you're excited to meet them. They're excited to meet you too. Yeah, don't mess up because they're happy to have you here. So you're going to learn a little bit more about what their role is and how they are here to support you as you go through Promises, Promises. The first thing you need to know is that for the next little bit, we do not want you to think of the three of us as the folks who are here from Eagles Flight. Instead, we are all ambassadors of the hypothetical United League of Nations. So as such, we have a bit of a costume change. There we go. So now we are easily identified as ambassadors because of our blue sashes. Thanks so much, guys. Get out of my way. Okay. So you're going to hear more from them as we go. Again, their role is to help you be successful, which is the next thing I want to talk about. This will be a team-based challenge. As I mentioned, you are right now sitting with your team. It is my hope that you will be successful, but I also want to be completely transparent. Not every group is successful at this particular challenge. So I encourage you to pay close attention to the rules of the experience that you're going to go through. So I've already established who I am. I am the ambassador of the United League of Nations. On the count of three, everyone say, "Hi, Mr. Ambassador." 1, 2, 3. Thanks. That felt really warm and sincere. I appreciate that. And Mike and Greg are ambassadors with me, but that's not what matters. What matters is who you are. So let me explain who you are. Each of you has fought a very challenging political campaign in order to earn the right to represent your country here at the United League of Nations. You come from the finest families in your respective nations. You've been afforded every opportunity of private education and high-level coaches and consultants to prepare you for this, the culmination of your career. So just to acknowledge where you have come already, give yourselves just a polite golf clap. Don't overdo it. You're all representatives of your nation, after all. So you then are here to represent your country. The name of your country is on that flag in front of you. Now, as your ambassador, one of the things I get to do is administer your oath of office. So you will find at your tables badges with your country. What I'd like you to do is stand up, hold that badge in your left hand. So there should be enough for everyone. So go ahead and stand up, put that badge in your left hand. Raise. Oh, sorry. One thing before we go any further. Yes, thank you for that reminder. I need to just check on something. Someone in the room, does anyone drive an Expedition with Mississippi plates? Yeah. So if you haven't already, I guess you're in a spot that we're not supposed to use. So the soonest opportunity, just relocate your vehicle. Or maybe now, I guess, is what I'm hearing. So, hey, everyone else on his team, pay close attention so he knows what to do when he comes back. All right. So, you're standing, you've got your badge in your left hand. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, state your name. About half of you went for it. Nice. As the duly elected representative of state your country, you really have to say it. Okay, I want to be really clear. It's your country. You can pronounce it any way you want to. All right. Do hereby promise to meet the needs of my citizens by fulfilling my campaign promises and becoming a truly united League of Nations. Excellent. Go ahead and put that badge somewhere where people can see it. It's going to be important that people know which country you represent. Once you've done that, have a seat. What I'd like you to do next, I've said a couple times that you're sitting with your team, and you got a little information when you were talking about stickers earlier, but I want you to take a moment now and really check out your teammates. Don't look at me, look at them. Really size them up, because your results this morning might depend on these people. And it's too late to change where you're sitting, so this is who you got. All right, so in order to be successful, as I mentioned, it is not a guarantee that you will be successful. In order to be successful, there are two things you need to accomplish, two parts of your mission. It's basically the oath you just took. So you need to meet the needs of your citizens by fulfilling your campaign promises, and you need to become a truly united League of Nations. All right, the next thing I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to have you open up that wooden box. We call that your treasury box. Don't do it yet. Wait. Wait, because here's what's going to happen. As soon as you open the box, it's going to turn into Christmas morning. You're going to play with the toys in the box, and you're going to stop listening to me. Resist that urge. All I need you to do, and that ribbon, that's Velcroed. It should come off pretty easily. You're just going to open it up. On top, you're going to find some passports. You're going to take out the passports, and then you're going to shut the box again. Go ahead and do that now. Just take out the passports and then close the box. Again, that ribbon, it'll slide off, or if you just lift on the coin, it's Velcroed. All right. So here's why I had you do that. Before I have you look at those passports, just make sure everyone on your team has one, everyone at your table. There's a lot of information there. I'm going to go through all of that. That passport is a tool for you to use. What I mean by that is feel free to write all over it, take whatever notes you want, mark it up, use it in whatever way is going to help you. The other thing I want you to know is the reason I had you be extra careful about those treasury boxes, and this is important to note, what's inside your treasury box is not the same as what is inside every other country's treasury box. So please treat it accordingly. All right, the next thing I'd like you to do is you just open up that passport, and the inside front cover, there's a little bit of information about your country. So just take a minute or so and scan through that first page so you can learn a little bit more about your great nation. We're going to go through all the pages, just focus on that inside front cover page for now. All right, you don't have to memorize it, just wanted you to get a sense of your nation. So what we're going to do next is I want to introduce you to all of the countries in the room. Before I do this, I want to clarify an important thing to note. We actually have consider them two continents, two sections in the room. So as I go through the information, I want you to know that you're only going to use this with your half of the room. In other words, if these 10 countries here, you are only going to be interacting within this side of the room, and your ambassador is Greg. So if you're in this side of the room, say, "Hi, Greg." He's here to help you. He's here to answer questions. He wants you to be successful. Similarly, on this side of the room, these 10 countries, these 10 tables, you are only interacting with this side of the room. I want you to imagine that there's just a vast, impassable cavern or chasm or mountain range, whatever image works for you, that you're not going to cross. Mandy is going to ensure. And you do not want to get on her bad side, as you all know. So stay on your side of the room. On this side of the room, you're supported by Ambassador Mike. Everyone say hi, Mike. Again, he wants you to be successful. So ask him questions. He's here to help you navigate what's about to happen. All right, so what that means is there are 10 countries in the United League of Nations. We just got 2 of each. So there's 10 over here, 10 over there. When I call your country name, I just want you to stand up and face the other 9 countries in your side of the room so that they know who's who is really what we're going to be doing. We do this alphabetically, so first up is Antigua. If you are here from the great nation of Antigua, stand up so your side of the room knows who you are. Here's what you need to know about this country. They are a nation of universities and students. They highly prize university education, which is why their national symbol is a beer mug. And it's probably also why their national motto is "Tomorrow Be True." Thank you, Antigua. Go ahead and have a seat. Next, we have Bahria. If you are from Bahria, please stand up. This is the great nation of Bahria. Among other things, they are known for their fun-loving, sort of game-like culture, which includes things like inventing miniature toys. And one invention they've recently put out to market is basically miniature toy robot armies, which several of you have purchased from them. And yeah, maybe they malfunction a little. It's not that big a deal. Don't worry about it. So welcome, Bahria. Go ahead and have a seat. Next, we have the great nation of Bintu. If you are from Bintu, please stand up so people know who you are. So Bintu is an island nation. They are a vacation wonderland. Their national motto is "Whatever your heart desires," and their marketing slogan, of course, is "Have you been to Bintu?" So Bintu, welcome. Have a seat. Next, we have Geldar. Geldar, please stand up so people know who you are. So this is the nation of Geldar, a nation of towering mountain ranges. They are known as the Rewarded. One thing that this country is known for, they've invented something called the ageless mirror. Basically, this is a mirror that when you look into it, it will reflect back you at whatever age you would like it to show you. So that's something that Geldar is known for. The Rewarded, please have a seat. Next, we have Halportia. Halportia, please stand up. So this nation was founded when a cruise ship full of entertainers crashed onto the shore. So this entire nation is known for Broadway musicals and interpretive dance. These people may burst into song at any moment. We just don't know. Halportia, welcome. Have a seat. Next, we have the nation of Yasna. Yasna, please stand up. So here's what you need to know about Yasna. First of all, their national motto is "We need only us." They are a very loyal nation. They also really love their pets. So much so that they have invented a dog collar that will actually translate a dog's barks into English. I don't know if I want to know what my dogs are saying about me, but that's the nation of Yasna. Welcome, Yasna. Have a seat. Next, we have Mertante. Mertante, please stand up. So this is the nation of Mertante, a very environmentally focused country. Their motto is "The good, the great, and the green." Their number one import, as you all know, is popsicle sticks. Thanks, Mertante. Go ahead and have a seat. We have the nation of Botswana. Botswana, please stand up so people know who you are. I don't know if any of you know how the nation of Australia was founded. Basically, Great Britain sent all of their criminals and people that they didn't want in the country, they shipped them off to Australia. Botswana is the opposite of that. This country was founded by finding all of the best and brightest from throughout the world. Their national motto is "Guts, glory, and good looks." I'll let you figure out which is which on their team. Thanks, Botswana. Go ahead and have a seat. we have the nation of Rostoto. If this is you, please stand up so people know who you are. All right, so the nation of Rostoto is a very family-focused nation, so much so that their number one export is people, just because they keep making them. So they're also known, they make amazing stained glass, and they make amazing ships. That's why their motto is bold and true. Welcome, Rostoto, have a seat. Last but not least, we have the nation of Samosia. If you are from Samosia, please stand up so people know who you are. So Samosia it's a nation with a population of about 57,000 people and about 1.5 million elephants. That is their thing. Each of these people is prepared to tell you elephant jokes if you give them half a chance. And as such, their motto is, "We never forget." So, Moshe, please have a seat. All right, so these are all 10 countries in the League of Nations. Please give a warm welcome to your fellow representatives. I hope you were paying attention because you will need to interact with at least some of these countries in order to be successful. So I want to remind you again of what success looks like. You have a two-part mission. You need to meet the needs of your citizens by fulfilling your campaign promises. You need to become a truly united League of Nations. So what I'm going to talk about next are those promises. Each of you has made promises around 3 key resources. As I move into this next section, feel free to take a look inside your treasury box because you will find that you may already have some of these resources in your possession. Just remember that what's inside your treasury box is not the same as what's inside every other country's treasury box, so treat it accordingly. So the first resource that you've made promises around is food. Food represents the general health and well-being of your citizens. It is symbolized by those little packets that we have cleverly labeled food. So that's the first thing. The second resource that you've made promises around is wealth. That represents the economic strength of your country, and it is symbolized by those round metal ingots. Again, you may or may not have some of these already in your possession. The third resource is around environment. Environment represents the natural beauty of your great nation, and it is symbolized by those smooth river stones. The size of the stone doesn't matter, it's how many you have. So, as you look inside your treasury box, you may see that you already have some of these 3 key resources. Some of you may also have noticed an additional item in your treasury box. It's those little koosh ball looking things. You're going to learn more about those as we go. For right now, I'm just going to say this. Do not be fooled by their toy-like appearance. Everyone say, ooh, yes, I know, very ominous. So, you're going to hear more about those as we go. I want to turn your attention back to your passport now. So on the next page, you will see a couple of grids. I'm going to explain what those are and how you can use them. The first thing I want you to know is you have been elected to a 5-year term of office. How long is your term? 5 years, right? However, because of your vast political skill, it's going to feel like every year lasts about 10 or 12 minutes. Everybody get that? Okay, good. So that grid at the top, this is a place for you to track those 3 resources as you go. The column that says start, this should match what you currently have in your possession. For those of you who are so inclined, feel free to conduct an audit. If it doesn't match, let your ambassador know, and we've got extras to make it right, but that should match what you've got. And then at the end of every year, you may find that you have made some deals with other countries in your continent, and so your numbers may change. So at the end of every year, that's just a place for you to update your totals. How are we tracking at the end of every year? How many of these 3 things do we actually have in our possession? So that's what the top grid is for. The bottom grid, this represents your country's specific promises. And just like what's in your treasury box is different, your promises are not the same as the promises of every country that is in your continent. Here's how you read it. For each of these 3 resources, you're going to see a number and a deadline year. It means you need to have that many of that item in your possession by the end of the year. For example, if this were my passport, This is telling me I need to have 10 of those food packets physically in my possession by the end of year 1. That's how I would read that. Again, you're going to have a different number and a different deadline year. The other thing you need to know, whatever that target is, you need to maintain that level for the rest of the 5-year term. Again, if this were me, I need to have 10 of those food packets in hand by the end of year 1, and I need to hold that number. I still need to have 10 at the end of 2, 10 at the end of 3, 10 at the end of 4. I can't just hit it once and then give it away. So again, pay attention to your specific promises that are in your passport. That's the first part of your mission right there. You got to have that number by the end of that year and maintain it for however many years are left. Any year before that deadline year, doesn't matter what you've got. So that's how you read that grid. What I want to talk about next are those little koosh balls. Because here's what's going to happen. We're going to be going through this, and you're going to be up and maybe talking to some of the other countries, maybe making some little deals or negotiations or whatever you're doing, and then we'll get to the end of the year, and we're going to figure out, all right, did everybody meet their promises? So if we come to the end of a year, and looking around the room, I'm quite confident that you're all going to be able to meet these deadlines. Maybe. So here's what's going to happen. If we get to the end of a year and you have not fulfilled a campaign promises, that's what these koosh balls are for. We call that a scandal campaign. That's what we're going to use them for. So let me explain a little bit further about what this will look like. It's important you understand what the scandal process looks like. We'll get to the end of the year, and I will be giving you time. I'll keep giving you time checks so you'll have a sense of how much time is left. So at the end of the year, I'm going to say, hey, has everybody met their deadlines? If everyone says yes, great. I'll say Happy New Year. We'll move on to the next year. If, however, anyone says no, you're going to raise your hand, 2 things will happen. The first thing is this. Remember what I said earlier? You're from the finest countries in your nation. This is the culmination of your political career representing your country here at the United League of Nations. So if you miss one of these deadlines, just imagine the shame that will fall upon you or on your family back home. So if anyone does raise their hand saying that they have missed one of these deadlines, the rest of us are going to gasp in shock. We're going to practice that. Gasp on 3. 1, 2, 3. Well gasped. So that's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is you have to start what's called a scandal campaign. If you engage in a scandal campaign, we're going to ask you 2 questions. First, what do you wish to scandalize for? That's going to be whatever resource you don't have enough of. And the second thing we're going to ask you is, who do you wish to scandalize? You can scandalize any other country in your side of the room. You can pick anybody you want. And basically at that point, what you're attempting to do is take all of that resource from that other country. I may have missed my deadline by only 1, but when it gets to a scandal campaign, now we're playing all or nothing. So even though I might be 1 short, I'm looking to take all 8 of whatever they have, whatever it is. Not everything in their box, just that one particular resource. This is actually easy to understand with a visual demonstration. So the 3 of us are going to demonstrate what a scandal campaign might look like. Let's imagine we've come to the end of a year, and I've asked the question, has anyone missed a deadline? And what happens is the country of Mike raises their hand. What do? Well remembered, exactly, yes. And then I ask a representative of the country to come down to the front, and this will be Mike and Greg running this for you. So you'll come down. So what this means is Mike has missed a deadline. And so then I would ask him, what do you need to scandalize for? Let's say it's wealth, right? So Mike missed his wealth deadline. I will then say, who do you wish to scandalize? He can pick any other country. He chooses the country of Greg. So someone from the defending country then comes down, bring your treasury box. So the situation we have is we have the country of Mike scandalizing the country of Greg over wealth. They will then grab this black bag, which we call the scan handler. I don't know why. Yes, exactly, because people are going to want to grab that trademark. So what happens is Mike is the country with the unmet need. They have no choice. They have to launch a scandal campaign. They do that by putting one of those koosh balls, and you're just going to pretend, into the black bag. So you'll do this. Hang on to those because that belongs to somebody, right? Yeah, they're watching you like a hawk. Do you see them over there? So, so the attacker has no choice. They've got an unmet need. I then go to the defender. If you are the defending country, you always have a choice. This is your choice. You can choose to defend that resource by throwing a koosh ball of your own, or you could just give all of that resource to the attacking country. So the country of Greg could either give all of their wealth over to the attacker, or they could choose to defend. Let's say they chose to defend. They would toss one of their koosh balls in the scan handler. We go back to the attacker. They have no choice. They're going to toss another one. So I'll go back and forth until somebody runs out. Or the defender says, you know what, uncle, take my stuff. Could be another option. Whichever country runs out first, they have lost the scandal campaign. And I will take all of the resource in question, in this case wealth, and give it to the other country. So if Greg loses, I would take all of his wealth tokens and give it over here to Mike. If Mike loses, I would take whatever wealth he does have and give it to Greg. And remember, these deadlines carry forward, so now Mike's in an even bigger hole going into the next year. Before we do that, though, we will first ask if any other country wishes to come to that country's aid. So let's say Greg ran out. Before I took his wealth, I would first ask, is there any other country that wishes to support them? You're going to have to decide quick. You're going to get a hard 5-second countdown to make this decision. If you decide to support, one person from that country would come down front, and you would now be tossing on this side. Know that if you join a scandal campaign, you are putting all of your resource at risk as well. So if a second country joined and they still lost, I would take all of Greg's wealth and all of that other country's wealth and give it to Mike. No limit to how many countries can join into a scandal campaign. That is entirely up to you and whatever arrangements you have made with your fellow countries. It is absolutely something you're allowed to talk about in advance if you want to. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Greg. That's a scandal campaign. Now, I know I went through that quickly, and it's important that you understand it. So, yes, I was going to open it up for questions. I will come back to you because I have a couple questions to ask first. If they don't answer your question, let me know. Okay, so just a couple general questions just to check for understanding. It's important that you understand how these scandal things work. So, can you support or be supported by another country? Yes, absolutely. It's important to know that. I didn't touch on this, but just to clarify, does the color matter? It doesn't. Just want to make sure everyone's clear. The purple ones aren't super powered or anything like that. They're all the same. When can you scandalize? This is critical. Yeah, at the end of a year, if you've missed a deadline. That is the only time you can launch. You can't just arbitrarily start chucking these things at each other, all right? That is the only time you can actually start a scandal campaign. Who can you scandalize? Any other country on your side of the room, right? You got to stay within your continent of 10 countries, but any other country you're allowed to scandalize. And here again, I didn't address this, but can you get them back, do you think? The answer is no. These are one use only. Once one of these scandals goes into that black bag, it is out of play, and at no point are we going to introduce more scandals into the room. So however many are out there in your continent, that is your total supply of those scandals. Did that address your question? Yeah, go. Got it. So the question was, do we have to do a scandal if we don't hit our deadline? The answer is yes. If you miss one of those deadlines, you have no choice. You must start a scandal campaign. Question? How do we know what resources other countries have? That is an awesome question. It would be great for you to figure that out as we go. But I don't just mean to be flip. I'm going to address that right now, actually. Yeah, that's a great question. So, you're going to, once we start this thing, when we begin year one, you're going to get up, you're going to talk to each other. You could ask that question of another country if you wanted to, right? So you can, as you are interacting with other countries, you can make any deal you want. There's no official exchange rate for any of these things. Make whatever deal you want to make with other countries. Every single thing in your treasury box, every single thing, including those koosh balls, is fair game for whatever deal you want to make. There is only one thing that we are not going to allow you to trade with another team, a teammate. But anything else at your table, you're allowed to make a deal for. All right, so The next thing, though, I want to talk about, which sort of gives a little bit of a flavor to the question you asked about needs, which is a great question, by the way. So on the back of your passport, and this is the final piece of information, and then we're going to go. So part of your role here at the League of Nations is to uphold your country's foreign policy. What I mean by that is there are certain pre-existing relationships that exist between different countries. Some of you already got a hint at this when you were reading your country introductions and reading that initial page. So what this means for you, practically speaking, there are three kinds of relationships. You may or may not have countries in all three buckets. It's important, though, that you know what all three types of relationships are. The first one is what we call a right-on. If you are in a right-on relationship with another country, you could not be closer. You hope your kids grow up and marry each other. That's how close you are. If you were in a right-on relationship with another country, the way you let them know is you walk up to them, you look them in the eye, and you do this. Right on. Everybody practice that on 3. 1, 2, 3. That's how you let them know. Now, the next kind of relationship is the exact opposite of that. It's not a right-on, we call it a right-off. If you're in a right-off relationship with another country, not only do you not want your kids to marry, you would move to be in a different school district so they never even meet each other. You want nothing to do with a write-off. You can have no direct contact with a write-off. The only thing you can do is let them know that they're a write-off. The way you do that is you walk up to them, you look them in the eye, and you do this. Everybody try that on 3. 1, 2, 3. That's how you let them know. That is the only interaction you can have. You can have no direct contact with a write-off. I'm going to say that again. You can have no direct contact with a write-off. You can't talk to them. You can't make a loud announcement that they might overhear. You can't shoot them a text under the table. You can't use sign language. You can have no direct contact with a write-off. You can just let them know that they're a write-off. You can still scandalize a write-off. That does not break the no contact rule because you're working through an ambassador. All right. Last kind of relationship is what we call an all right. You don't love them, you don't hate them, they're just all right. The way you let them know that that's what they are to you is you look them in the eye and you give them one of these. Everybody try that. 1, 2, 3. That's it. So those are the three kinds of relationships. Again, if you look on the back of your passport, you may or may not have countries in all three buckets. Here's the last thing you need to know. Just like everything else, what's on your passport might not match what's on theirs. So just because I think it's one thing, they might think it's something else. If either country shows it as a write-off, it is a write-off for both. Doesn't matter what mine says. If yours says write-off, we're write-offs, and we can have no direct contact. You are not authorized to change that relationship. If it's a write-off now, it will still be a write-off at the end of year 5. Write-ons and all rights might change, but that's based on the quality of your interactions with one another more than anything else. All right, last thing we're going to share, and then we're going to start year 1. I want to remind you again of your mission. Meet the needs of your citizens by fulfilling your campaign promises, becoming a truly united League of Nations. What I'm showing you now is the Country Control Board. Here's what this is. This shows you how much of every resource, so I know this sort of gets to your question. This shows you how much of every resource every country has right now. Your ambassadors have just revealed your own version of this, so you're always going to be able to come up and look at the flip chart in your side of the room to see what people have. Now, this shows what they currently have in their possession. Doesn't show what their promises are, doesn't show how many scandals they have, but it shows their current inventory. At the end of every year, these are going to be updated by your ambassadors, so you will always know what is the current state of who's got what as we move through. All right. Believe it or not, that is everything you need to know to be successful at Promises Promises. I want to remind you again, Ambassador Mike, Ambassador Greg, and myself, we are in the room. Feel free to call us over if you have any questions. I'm going to count down from 3, and we're all going to say Happy New Year, and then year 1 will start. 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year! Year 1 just started. Good luck. You can pick this up next year. Return to your seats. Return to your seats. Pick this up next year. Go back to your tables. For right now, it's the end of year one. Go back to your table. No more deals. All right, return to your seats. Stop trading. Return to your seats. And just rejoin your teammates. Some of you haven't seen each other since the year began. So here's the first thing that you're going to do. Open up your passport, and items may have changed hands already. So in that year one column, just write down, what do you currently have in your possession? Food, wealth, and environment. What are your current numbers in your possession? No future draft picks or anything like that. You have to physically have the stuff in order to count it. Once you have done that, send one representative up to your ambassador so they can update the country control board with the end of year one totals. Once you're clear on your totals, send one person up to your ambassador. All right, everybody. The country control board has been updated, which means the numbers on the board right now are the new totals as of right now, the end of year one. That's not the important question, though. This is. Does anyone have a year one promise they have not met? Does anyone have an unfulfilled year one deadline? We are good through year one. Happy New Year. Year two just started. Good luck. Find your way back to your table. You can pick this up next year. You can pick this conversation up next year. Return to your table. Return to your table. This year is over. Return to your table. All right, so you know what to do. First step, update your totals in your passport in that year 2 column, whatever you currently have in your possession, and then send someone up to your ambassador so they can update the big board. You know. You got Tante got theirs. So you're gonna have one. Got it? Mike, you got everybody?
I'm just looking for.
All right, the board has been updated. That shows the totals here at the end of year 2. Before I ask the next question, I just want to give a couple of reminders based what some things I've been observing over the first 2 years. One, remember those relationships. Some of you are starting to form big clumps. So just be mindful that if there is a write-off within earshot, you're technically having contact with them. So if you find yourself in a big group discussion, just double check that one of your write-offs isn't listening in on something you might not want them to hear. The second thing is even though I mentioned it earlier, a couple of folks have been wandering over to the other side of the room. We know who you are. I want to promise you there is no advantage to doing that. In fact, you are probably hurting yourself because you're taking yourself out of the conversation on your side of the room. So just again, stay on your half of the room. Those are the 10 countries in your league. So with that, though, here comes that all-important question. Here we are at the end of year 2. Has anyone not met a year 2 promise? Anyone have an unfulfilled year? I see one over there. I see year 2. Year 2, I see one there. I saw at least one over on this side. Oh my goodness. Okay, so listen closely because it's going to get a little bit nuts. It's going to get loud. Both Mike and Greg are going to be running their separate scandal campaigns. Please help us out by trying to keep the chatter down so they can hear what's happening and they can manage these scandal campaigns. Mike and Greg, carry on. All right, everyone, let me have your attention. Both sections had some scandal action going on just then. All of those scandal campaigns have been resolved, which means those numbers on the board may no longer be accurate if things changed hand, but they're pretty close. With that, year 3 just started. Good luck. station, return to your tables. Find your way back to your country table. Year 3 has come to an end. You know what to do. Update your passport and send someone up to your ambassador so they can update the board. Good? You got everybody? All right. All right, so the boards have been updated. These are the totals here at the end of year 3. You know what's coming next. Does anyone have an unmet year 3 deadline? Raise your hand if you have not hit one of your year 3 or year 2. We got one over here. Anything over here? You're good. All right. So Mike, take care of your scandal campaign for this. Nope, we're not.
It's just a year 3 deadline. They were thinking you meant year 5.
Nope, just year 3. All right, so we're good over here. All right, so let me have your attention. We have no scandals here at the end of year 3. Before I start year 4, I have a question. Does anyone remember the 2 parts of your mission? Got to meet those promises, and what was the second part? Become a truly united League of Nations, yeah. So what's interesting is that so far, we've all gotten a lot of questions that are about the first part of that. And questions about, trading and who can I talk to and yeep, whoop, and all that kind of stuff. No one's asked us what truly united means. So I got to pause here, because it's 50% of your goal to just clarify what we mean by truly united. Here's the first thing you need to know. We do not have some sort of official benchmark definition of what truly united means. Each group, each company, defines it differently for themselves. So we're going to take a moment right now to land on a shared definition of truly united so you have a clear sense of what you're trying to work towards. Here's what I want you to do. At your table, just take 30 seconds to quickly discuss what is something you would need to see happening in the room in order for you to honestly answer, yeah, these 10 countries are truly united. So just 30 seconds or so to discuss that with your team. All right. That's time. You may or may not have agreed on something, but I at least wanted you to kick it around. So I'm going to get a couple from each side of the room, and I want to be really clear. You are not allowed to change the write-off rule. So that is not an option. Any of your write-offs, they will still be write-offs. You can't change that. But I'm going to come to this side first. If someone's got something, just raise your hand. What's one thing? Yeah. Got it. So what he's suggesting is that part of being truly united is that everyone's needs are met. Does that seem something you could all agree to? Great. So the first thing we're going to put on our list is all needs are met. Basically, you've got to fulfill the first condition in order to get to the second one. Great. Something else from over here. So who's got one? Just raise your hand. Over here, yeah.
Understand who can talk to who, so who's not written.
Yeah. So what John said was understand, like, what's the whole communication chain? Who can actually talk to each other? Seems like a reasonable thing to include. Great. So we've got all needs met, and we've got everyone understands the communication chain, or just write communication chain, I guess. But again, John, if I heard you correctly, it was everybody knows what that is. Yes? One more from this side. Yeah.
It may be something similar to the second one there, but relationships.
What about relationships?
Just understanding the relationships between who you can deal with, who you can't deal with.
Yeah, kind of sounds the same as understanding. Yeah, so still a good thing. It's on the list, right? Yeah.
Transparency. We can't fulfill your needs if we don't know what you need.
Oh, got it. So, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Paula, actually, it's Nicole's idea.
But so, Balina sharing on behalf of Nicole, the idea was that not just that all needs are met, but we're taking it a step deeper, that you actually know what everyone else needs, which is a really interesting distinction, right? It's one thing for you to tell me you're good. It's another thing for me to actually know what you needed, right? So we're going to add not just all needs met, but we're adding know all needs. And I'm going to get one more from this side of the room. Yeah. Trust. Love it. How would you know that trust was happening?
If people are meeting their promises that they made in trade. So if you're saying you're going to help somebody this year, and then you can trust that they're going to help you next year.
Got it. So kind of like honoring deals. Okay, great. So what she offered was trust, and then she clarified that further to we're defining trust for right now as people are honoring whatever arrangements, whatever deals, whatever agreements they've made with one another. They're actually doing what they said they would do, right? So excellent. I'm going to stop there because, years don't go very long. But just so everybody's clear, here's how we're defining truly united. The first part, all needs met. You all know what that is. It's what's in your passport. The second part, we're defining truly united as everyone's needs are met. Everybody knows what the communication chain is, who can talk to who. You know what other countries' needs, and trust. You are honoring all of your agreements, arrangements, negotiations, whatever that looks like going forward. All right. Now you know what truly united is. There's only a couple years left. Let's see how quickly you can accomplish all of this as well. Year 4 just started. Good luck. So here we are at the end of year 4. And rather than updating the board, because in checking in with my fellow ambassadors, we have a pretty good sense of where this is going. So I'm just going to ask it this way. Here at the end of year 4, does everyone have their needs met? Does everyone have what they need even through the end of year 5? In other words, all 3 of your numbers, you've already got that. Outstanding. Give yourselves a round of applause. So then, I'm just going to go ahead and say we have met the first part of success. You have fulfilled your campaign promises. You have met the needs of your citizens. Well done. Let's talk about the other half of success, though, that truly united idea. So here's how we're going to measure this. I'm going to ask each of you to individually consider whether you believe your section, your 10 countries, are actually doing all of these things. So just to help you consider that, I'm just going to reiterate what we collectively decided was the definition of truly united. First thing, everyone's needs are met. We know that's there because everyone's needs are met. Second part was around the communication chain. Do you know who can talk to everyone else? This is not just who can my country talk to, but are you clear on the overall communication chain? The third thing was knowing what everyone needs. Remember, there's a difference between I know that they're good and I know what they actually needed to get to that place. So I'll let you consider how well you know that. And the last one was the idea around trust. Were people honoring commitments? Were they being transparent? All of those sorts of ideas. Here's how we're going to measure it. Just consider for yourself. We're going to use a scientific tool that we call a fist to 5. I'm going to count to 3. You're going to hold up some number of fingers. If you hold up a fist, you're effectively voting 0. We are doing none of that. All the way up to 5, which would be you saying, I am 100% convicted that every person on my continent is doing all of those things. So that's the scale we're going to use. Decide how many fingers you're going to hold them up, and hold them up in 1, 2, 3. All right, I see a couple 5s. I see a lot of 4s. I see the occasional 3. So great, you can put your hands down. We have scientifically determined that the room average is about 4.38 based on the fingers that I just saw, which is pretty dang good. So give yourselves a round of applause. All right. Excellent. Here's what we're going to do. You've got just a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to have a bit of a conversation around promises, and why did we do this, and how does it tie back to the day. But seriously, 5 minutes. We call this a one-function break. You can go to the restroom, or you can check email. You do not have time to do both. All right? 5 minutes, and then return to these same seats. All right, welcome back, everyone. We're going to continue our discussion, and as the rest of your team filters back in, they'll just rejoin the conversation. So, as you come back in and you had a few minutes to stretch your legs, clear your head a little bit, let me first ask, did you have fun? Certainly seemed like you did, and that was, as I said, one of our goals for today. What we're going to do now, kind of in this little bit between now and lunch, is we're just going to look back on Promises, kind of unpack a little bit about what happened, and the goal of this conversation is really so you can start to consider what were some of the choices I made just then? What were things we did collectively as a group? And how does that relate back to this idea of client centricity? Before we do any of that, though, what I'd like you to do is take off your country badge. This is not a lovely parting gift. And more to the point, you can now talk to anybody you want to. We're going to take that rule away. In fact, I'm gonna lose my sash as well as we go. The next thing that I would like you to do is just check your pockets for that one koosh ball you're hanging on to, just in case, or that extra packet of food you were hiding from everyone, because you're not going to need any of that stuff. Just put it back in the wooden box. Okay, great. So now what I'd like to call your attention to, on your table, you'll see some little placemats that look like this. There should be enough for everyone. Make sure everybody grabs one of these. And if there aren't enough, we've got extras, so just raise your hand if you need another one or two at your table. So let me just explain what this is for. At Eagles Flight, one thing that we are not believers in is big fat training binders. Because we know from all the time that we've been doing this that most of them end up staying on the table when you leave, or at best they turn into a doorstop back at your office, right? So we try to keep things kind of lean and simple. So this is a place for you to take notes. If you're looking at this side of it, this has some of that language I shared earlier around here's the customer centricity why, and here's what that looks like overlaid over Highlander values. And then over on the right, there's just a little box there for you to take whatever notes you want to take. So as we move through this next discussion, and it will be a discussion, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to talk about this at your table. This is a place for you to capture your own little ahas or anything that you want to remember from this morning. That's just a place for you to take some notes. So again, write all over this thing. It is a tool for you to use in whatever way helps you. What I would suggest you do, though, is write your name on it, so that in case you find yourself wandering across the room, you can come back and find your own notes and not somebody else's. The other side of it, we're going to deal with that after lunch. So for right now, all you need to worry about is this side. It's got the Highlander values and things like that. That's the side we're on. All right, so what's going to happen now is, as I mentioned, we're just going to have a bit of a conversation around promises. So to start that conversation, I'm going to have you just at your table take a couple minutes with your team. And now that you have kind of stepped out of the experience a little bit, maybe your brain's starting to chew on it a little bit, just take a minute or two and discuss this question. What was this really about? As you think about how it sits within a day focused on client centricity, just what comes up? What are some of the things that this was really about? And I have a little hint, it wasn't about the little food packets. So a couple minutes at your table to kick that question around, see what you come up with. Just about one more minute for these discussions. All right, finish up whatever thought you're on. Let's come back together. So I'm going to, this next slide, I'm just going to build with some of the answers we often get when they ask this question, and you just let me know with some sort of a noise if any of these were things you were just talking about at your table. So some of the things that Promises is about, it's about working as a team, it's about communication, it's about trust, gathering info, relationships. Any of this come up in your conversation just now? Yeah, makes sense, right? A few other things that sometimes people come up with is it's about actually caring about other people. It's about collaboration. It's about actually keeping promises, moving with speed, adjusting, adapting. Did any of this come up in your conversation? Yeah. Anything anyone identified that's not on this list? What else? Yeah.
There was enough, turned out there was enough for everyone.
There.
And we build alliances with enough people where we're all in for you. If you're all in for us, it's all the same pile of scandals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the same pile in the long run. And if we're all agreed, hey, somebody's in trouble, we all come, even if we have to come together through somebody else to deal with somebody else, they got their back, you know?
Yeah, so that, again, for those of you who might not have heard, it's that idea that ultimately we realize this is about all of us together. And it's there is sort of that shift of, well, it was just my stuff, but it became collectively what are the resources we have to work with. Also, what I heard in there, for some people, there might have been an assumption that there wasn't enough to go around at the beginning. Because it's interesting, it's not a question I got asked. Greg, Mike, did anyone actually ask you if there was enough to go around at any point?
At the end.
Right towards the end, when people are coming to what you just described of, we want to make sure everybody's taken care of. Wait, is there enough to do that? Yeah, imagine how differently it might have gone had someone asked that question sooner. It might have impacted some of the choices you made. It might have, right? So this is what it's about. And certainly you all figured a lot of this out over the 4 years. You didn't even need all 5 years. I'll be quite honest with you. There are some groups that we have run this with. They would have needed a 6 or a 7 or beyond to even get the first part met, let alone come to truly united. So you really did move through that well. In order to do that, there were a lot of things you needed to figure out. There were a fair number of obstacles that you had to overcome in order to get to that place of success, of being truly united, of having everybody's needs met. So what were some of the obstacles? You can just shout something out. What were some obstacles? The communication chain, 100%. I can't go straight to who I want to talk to. That was something you had to figure out. What's another thing that made it harder to do this?
Starting to trust.
The levels of trust and things that may or may not have been present in the room, right? And there was something over here? I didn't hear it. Oh, you also said trust. So 2 people right away identified that was a big one you had to solve for. The time element. Yeah, so you had to move at pace, absolutely. Any other things that made it tricky? Any other things you needed to solve for?
You're limited on what you can bargain with, who you can trade with.
So,
Limitations of what you have.
Yeah, so this is my starting position, and that maybe restricts what I'm able to do. I heard that. And what was the other one? Yeah, just the general understanding, not just the resources, but how does this whole thing work? I'll add that to the mix, just understand, because I went through a bunch of stuff really quickly and then said, okay, go. And at least half of you looked at me like, what do you mean go? You haven't told us what to do yet. So yeah, all of that, right? So I'll add a few more to that list as you think about all of, oh, there was one more here?
The natural inclination to hold your cards close to your vest.
Absolutely. Yeah, great one.
Self-preservation was a big thing in the beginning.
Yeah, there's kind of that human nature thing of I got to protect myself for sure, right? I said, so to that end, I saw a number of negotiations, especially early, and I'll come back to you, that kind of were some version of this. So let's make a deal. Yeah, no, you really want what I have. No, trust me, it's really good for you. Without like, it's like that self-preservation thing, right? What were you going to add? Yeah, that was interesting. So what he said, if you didn't hear, was that sort of there was a collective focus for a lot of folks around the scandals rather than around the actual resources. In fact, here's a direct quote that we overheard at one point from someone in the room. I don't know who it was, but what we heard was, if we just focus on the resources, there will be no scandals. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what those scandals actually represent. So again, I think you've nailed everything on my list, right? So some of the things, yes, the communication chain, trust, assumptions that people make, the self-interest piece, and by other people, that's code for there might be one person in your section that you felt was an obstacle. You don't have to name them, don't point, but sometimes that comes up for certain people. Just the time element that came up, the understanding piece that you called out, right? So there was a lot you had to figure out really quickly amidst a lot of noise, a lot of chaos, and potentially conflicting priorities. As you're looking at this list, here's what I want you to consider. Which of these were conditions of the experience, the rules of the game, or to put it another way, my fault? Of these various obstacles that you had to solve for, as you're looking at the list, I think there's two that you can point the finger at me around: the communication chain and time. Those were rules. We set that, the communication chain, and we kept saying you can't change that, you can't talk to write-offs, and the time factor of that constantly ticking clock, I imposed that. Everything else on the list is what you introduced into the experience. So the thing to consider then is, in real life, all of those other things, that's what happens when you get a bunch of smart, capable people like you, give them some big goals, and then just turn them loose. Those are some of the patterns that just happen naturally, and it's just whatever, how we're hardwired as humans, the way our brains work, whatever it is. We get into a place where we think about ourselves first, and self-preservation comes up. We start to make assumptions either about what we're supposed to do or about other people that we're working with. All of that other stuff is what happens if you don't pay specific attention to it. So think about, at the end of year 3, we had that brief conversation to actually define truly united. And having just that conversation, you were done by the end of year 4. So it doesn't have to be a big involved thing, but that's the value of talking about things like, here are the values, and what do they actually mean? That's the benefit you get from having a conversation around, hey, when we use this word client centricity, what does it actually mean? As opposed to just trusting, oh, everyone, yeah, we kind of know what that means. Great, let me get back to work. Right? It's part really of what this day is about, is collectively as a company, Gordon Highlander is putting a really intentional focus on this idea of client centricity, so you can leave today and have it just happen as cleanly as year 4 happened, as opposed to kind of the chaos and the tension and the conflict of year 2. So I'm going to build on that idea a little bit more. If you think about this whole experience as just one big analogy, right? Just one big kind of parallel to your real life. In Promises, you had this overall mission, truly united, and you had the United League of Nations in these 10 different countries. If you think about Gordon Highlander, right? It's kind of the same thing. You have a clear mission. You've got the Highlander way. And yeah, you've got departments and divisions and expanding and all of that, but ultimately, it's really just the same. It's people trying to meet promises given whatever resources and deadlines are at play. It's the same idea. So as you're continuing to think about promises, and you continue to have conversations around it, what I encourage you to do is look back on what happened over that period of time. If there are things that you did well, great. Keep doing those in real life. If there are things that you would do differently, if we were going to play this again, which we are not going to do, but if we were, if there are things you would do differently, great. Do them a little bit differently back on your real life, back on your day-to-day job. Because that difference between year 2 and year 4, you didn't have to make big changes, right? It was just a little bit of shift in your focus. It was a little bit of having a deeper understanding of what this thing was really about. To kind of boil it down to a nutshell, it was collectively, you sort of made this shift to realize, and you said it really nicely, is that it's not about me, it's about us. It's one of the key ideas that we want you to remember coming out of this experience. And when you make that shift, it changes how you interact with one another. It changes your willingness to be collaborative and to be open and honest about the information you share. It changes maybe your willingness to give without getting something immediately back because you're focused on the whole group rather than here's just me and my needs and this is what I need right now in this moment. Some of you already think this way. Some of you think this way, but it's not apparent to the people around you that that's actually how you're approaching it. Sometimes this is really just a matter of perception. So part of this is kind of assuming positive intent with each other. I saw a lot of interactions during Promises where people were really, really guarded in how you were talking to one another, right? I saw a lot of conversations that were completely focused on scandals. And I lost track of how many times someone said, can we trade for scandals? Can we trade for scandals? What if someone scandalizes me? Can someone help me? Yeah, absolutely, right? I'm going to talk a little bit more about the scandals in a second, because what to think about is in order to get to this place, it's not about me, it's about us, 2 things need to be on point. Trust and communication. 2 are the things that came up on your initial list. What was this about? Also things that came up in the what were the obstacles. So you already are aware that these were critical elements. On the job, these things are linked. They're not separate from one another. So if you feel like, oh, for me and my team, we need to get better at trust, well, look at how are you communicating with one another. Vice versa. If you feel like, wow, it seems like we're not really communicating well, where's your trust at? Because if I don't trust you, we're not going to communicate well. I'm going to be guarded. I'm going to question your motives. I'm going to think you've got a hidden agenda. All of that stuff starts to go on. Whether the issue is around trust or the issue is around communication, typically what is at the root of that is fear. Somebody's afraid of something. Either somebody's afraid that they're going to lose something they have, somebody's afraid that they're not going to get something that they're looking for. It's some variation of that. And if you don't deal with that, if you can't get rid of that, that's where the scandals come in. So let me talk a little bit about scandals, because both sides had several of these. Some of you were overachievers at scandals, which, by the way, is not the target you want to exceed, just to be clear, right? So here's what a scandal represents. And I'm not talking about scandals with a capital S that land you on the cover of the journal, right? I'm talking about scandals with a little s. It's those things that people do at work when they feel like they have no other way to get what they need. That's really what it comes down to. Because scandals in the experience in the game, think about it, right? Why did someone have to throw a scandal? Yeah, I needed something. I had an unmet need, and I had no other choice. This is what Ambassador Scott said we have to do. It's the same thing in real life. It's the stuff that people do because to them, they feel like they have no other way to get their needs met. You can look at it objectively and say, wow, that's a really unproductive choice. But for that person in the moment, they feel like they have no other option. So I'll just throw out some examples of what a scandal might look like. A scandal could be as simple as somebody has asked me for this tool, but I know I'm going to need it later, so I don't want to let it go right now, even though they need it right now. One example. Somebody sends me a voicemail with a question, but I'm so focused on what I'm trying to do, my own needs, that I might not return that call for a day or two, even though they need something in the moment. Here's another example of a scandal that sometimes happens, and this is sort of my own experience. I'm not going to talk a lot about my background, but before doing this sort of work, I was internal. I was a VP at a Fortune 100, a really big bank here in the States, and this happened to be all the time. Somebody sends someone else an email. The receiver of the email, for whatever reason, gets pissed off. They don't like the choice of words, or they think the person meant something else. Whatever, doesn't matter. So that person who receives the email and it cheeses them off, what do? They fire back, right? And they send a really angry response. But what else do? They copy their manager. And they copy their colleagues because I want the rest of my team to know about the a-hole over there who just sent me this email. And before you know it, there's this huge swirl of reply all, forward reply all, and nobody even knows what the initial thing was. We're just spending all of our time trying to unpack whatever this was about, and that's the thing to think about. It's about the impact. The initial scandal, whatever. That person thinks they had no other choice. I get it. What matters is the impact, because all of the time and energy that gets into the swirl of scandals is time and energy that people are not focused on the actual job at hand. They're not focused on meeting client needs and doing brilliant work. So the key moment, if you think about scandals, the key moment is not the attacker. They have no choice. The key moment is, what does the defender do? Because what we saw, and we saw both examples. We had a scandal campaign today where I think we ended up with 5 or 6 countries down front just chucking stuff, right? We also had an example of a country being in a scandal and they were the defender, and at one point they said, yeah, they can just have the stuff because my need's not till year 4, year 5, and they need it right now. It's the same thing at work. So as you think about this idea of scandals and how it might play out for you, if a scandal comes your way or what you think might be a scandal, just stop for a second. Give the person the benefit of the doubt and ask yourself, what do they really need? They might not be good at saying it or expressing it or explaining it, but just when what feels like a scandal comes your way, just take a second and consider, what is it that's really going on for the person? And maybe pick up the phone or walk over and ask them, hey, when you said that in the meeting, what did you mean? Because here's how it sounded, right? You're going to save so much time, so much effort, so much energy going forward that you can get back to what is it that we're really trying to do here. Scandals are one of the big things that will stop you from being truly client-centric. Because if you are inwardly focused and navigating scandals and who said what and who's pointing the finger at who and all of that, that is all time and energy that you're not thinking about what do our clients need, that you're not thinking about how do we create an outstanding experience for that client. All of that stuff is out the window because your focus is completely internal and, they hit me, I'm going to hit them back. They bring a knife, I bring a gun. That's the Chicago way. Like whatever's going on in your brain when that stuff goes on. So with that in mind then, the next big thing I want you to consider is you have to figure out how do you create a scandal-free zone on your teams, on a job, within the entire company. Even today, I was tracking time and we collectively spent 12 or 13 minutes just on scandal campaigns. It's like a whole other year. in the scheme of the game that we were just not trying to be truly united or trying to fulfill our promises. That's the impact when these things happen at work. So let me talk a little bit more about what actually happened today. So we have this idea of a big picture. If you have not yet figured out the communication chain, I'm going to show it to you right now. You could talk to the country in your circle or any country in an adjacent circle. Practically speaking, is there a difference between a right on and an all right? No. Can I talk to you or not is really what it boils down to. And the whole, well, you're a right on, so you have to cut me a better deal. I don't know why that comes up, but people talk about that. At one point, I think someone was actually trying to make a trade for elephants. I don't know how that came into the mix, but right over there, thanks for owning it, Gordo, yeah. Right? So here's basically what happened today. Because this is who you could talk to, you naturally gravitate to those other countries. And what we saw happening almost right away is we were seeing clusters of teams in the room. And typically, these countries cluster together, partly because they can talk to each other, partly because they kind of start in a similar situation. So Bintu Mertante, just when we started, how many of the three things did you already have what you needed? Just one. So these countries started in a 2/3 deficit, and when did your deadlines kick in? Year 2. So they didn't have stuff, and they had deadlines starting right away in year 2. So if the Bintu, the Mertante, or even a little bit the Halportia, the Berea in your side, if they seemed a little desperate, they seemed a little needy, that's why. That was the reality of their situation, right? So these countries tend to bind together over that reality. And think about how it played out for you if you were one of these 4 countries. You start to have conversations and you start to form alliances, and it's generally revolving around those unmet needs. Man, we need food. Who are we going to go after? Yeah, are you with me? We're going to get all their food, and then we'll be fat and happy, right? And yeah, you're laughing because you know you had that conversation. So, yeah. So on the other side, though, we got Botswana, Geldar, the rewarded, guts, glory, and good look. Also, to some degree, Yasna and Ristoto. So, Botswana, Geldar, when we started, how many of the 3 things did you have what you needed? All of them. And when were your deadlines? Year 5. So these were the countries when I said, okay, ready, set, go. They looked at me like, what do you mean? We think we're done, right? So for the other countries, as you're thinking about these 4 countries, if they seemed a little kind of snobbish or a little aloof, or maybe they weren't engaging in conversations, it's because they didn't need to. Again, it's all driven by the reality of somebody's situation. So these countries, again, they start to bind together. They start to form natural alliances. And typically what their strategy around? Protection. Doesn't take these countries too long to realize, oh, we got the stuff, they want the stuff, we're a target. And then these are the countries that they're making deals for scandals, and hey, if they attack us, you got my back, and all of those conversations start to happen, right? So what that means for you is as you think back to this experience, these 2 countries in the middle become the most important countries in the room. Antigua, Samosia, it's not that hard for them to get what they need. They have some needs, but they're not, I need 1 of this, 2 of that, and I got a couple years to get there. But if they disengage, if they just sort of get what they need and lay back because they don't want to be collateral damage in someone else's scandal campaign, the whole thing falls apart. Because if they don't stay involved and connected, there's no way for the food to move from one side to the other and the environment to move in the other direction. You are guaranteed to have scandals all day long, unless those connector countries really step into that role and really have the ability to take a wider view and say, here's what's going on, here's the big picture goal we're headed towards, how do we get there? So here's what I want you to talk about at your table for just a minute. On your mat, you have this diagram, these 5 circles. I want you to quickly discuss at your table who would you put in those buckets at Gordon Highlander? How would you, if you were going to do this by function or by department, or you could even put individuals on your team, however you want to do it, just give a little thought to who's in which position. Who are the haves? Kind of the Portswana Geldars. Who are the have-nots? The Bintu and Mertantes. And who would you put in the middle as those connector people? Just a minute or two at your table to talk about that. Just press pause on your conversation for a moment. I know that wasn't a lot of time, and I'm hearing a lot of lively debate and discussion going on at your table. I'm going to definitely, we just have a couple more minutes, and then we will break for lunch. So here's what I would suggest. First of all, did you have immediate agreement on what would go in all of those circles, or were there some differences of opinion or some variation of, well, it kind of depends? Yeah, typically it depends comes up a lot. I agree with you. There is not only one right answer. It's not like I'm going to click a button and it's going to fill in with the correct answer or anything like that. But it's really more of a framework to consider in any given situation, on any given project, which circle am I in? Am I a Geldar in this situation? I have resources that other people need. I just need to figure out how to get it to them. Am I a Bintu? In some situations, I have big needs and I don't have the resources. How do I let people know that who might be willing to help me out? Or am I in that Antica Samosia spot where I can sort of connect to both ends of this, and I'm just going to make sure that the information, the resources, whatever it is really moving quickly and smoothly through the system? Because here's who is really on the far right of this. However you fill in the buckets, whether you were thinking about departments within Gordon Highlander, whether you were thinking about individual players, however you filled it out, always, always, always on the far right of this is your client. Because they've got the real urgency, they have the tight deadlines, they have the big need. And not for nothing, they also have the biggest scandal in the room, which is to take their business somewhere else, which is kind of the ultimate scandal that a client could throw. So I encourage you, you've got that grid on the mat. Maybe this is something you take away and discuss further after today with your immediate team, or maybe just something you keep handy to consider for yourself at a project kickoff meeting or something like that. But a couple of things that I do want to touch on before we close out. What this really comes down to is part of client centricity, part of bringing this to life after today, is to make sure that everybody understands what the real big picture is? And then at the individual level, do I really understand where I sit in this overall big picture? Because it's going to change what I need to do. That's going to be a little more of our conversation for after lunch. For right now, before we break for lunch, because I have a couple of instructions about lunch first, what I want you to consider, what really is the true question that matters, is think about the morning. So you've heard a little bit about client centricity. You've heard a little bit about the journey that Gordon Highlander has been on that you're now all joining, and you've had this promises experience. But all you've done is just kind of sat through a morning. What really matters is what are you going to do with it? So take a moment for yourself. You can just have this be internal, or you can make a note for yourself, but what are you actually going to do differently when you leave here? Because I don't know what your personal takeaway has been so far. Only you know that. But take just a moment for yourself. And what have you taken away from the day so far that you really are committed to remembering and doing something with? And either write it down or shoot yourself a note on your phone, or if you trust your brain to remember it, just remember it. While you're doing that, I want to touch on this idea of commitment. So some of you may have already noticed, but I want to make sure everyone sees it. Over on that wall, there is a poster. And in the middle of the poster is some of the language you've already seen. It's got Gordon Highlander's mission. It's got the big Y around client centricity. And there are also some markers over there. So what I invite you to do when you are ready to do it, if you feel inspired to do it, is at some point during the rest of the day, just grab a marker and just sign the poster. Just as a way of acknowledging, yeah, I'm in. I get this client centricity thing, and I am willing to work to bring it to life in my role, in whatever my piece of the business is. I'm going to bring this to life. If you want to write more than just signing your name, that's okay. Know that that poster is going to be displayed at headquarters, though. So whatever you choose to write, know that a lot of people may see it, right? So again, you can do it right now if you want. You can do it over lunch. You can do it at the end of the day at whatever point. If you feel like you want to go add your name to the poster, please do that. All right, so lunch. Couple of things to clarify first. For the second half of the day, you're going to have a different table to sit at. So when you leave here and go to lunch, make sure you take your stuff. Lunch is going to be back over there. It's all set up, ready to go. And then when you come back in, make sure you check. There's going to be a new seating chart. So you just are going to be at a different table. That's the first thing to know. Some of you have already been, I'll say, voluntold to be table coaches. So if you're a table coach, raise your hand. You should know who you are. So if you've never heard of it, you don't have to worry about it. Table coaches, we're going to ask you to stay back just for a couple minutes to help us rearrange the tables for just a moment. When you go to lunch, know that there are 2 lines, so that'll help move everybody through the buffet a little bit quicker. Last thing, before you go to lunch, we are going to attempt a group photo. So let me explain how we're going to line up the photo, and then we'll try to get this done as quickly as possible. The photographer will be standing where I am. You're all going to cluster kind of right back there where Mandy and Ambassador Mike are. We'll more or less try to group as quickly and cleanly. Watch the elbows as you line up over there. Once the photographer says, yeah, got the shot, then you can all go eat. Table coaches are going to lay back so we can do a quick room reset. Excellent. So thanks so much for a great morning. Take your position for the group photo.